Hey, fourth graders. Welcome back to Reader's Workshop. It's Mrs. Calabrese. Um, it's Monday, and we are going to start exploring some different reading strategies this week. So, the first strategy that I'd really love to talk to you about is visualization. This is a really, really important strategy because I think it helps best with our comprehension. I use it all the time. I love to create pictures in my mind so that I can visualize what's happening in the story because that helps me understand it better. Okay? So, our learning target today is I hope you can see this. I can visualize images to help me understand what I've read. So, we're going to practice that today. We're going to practice closing our eyes as I read, and you're going to create images or a movie in your mind as I'm reading a story. So let's focus on the strategy. Visualization, or sometimes we call it sensory imaging or creating sensory images, helps us create those images in our mind. I like to call it a movie in my mind, so that I can actually see how things are playing out in the book. It helps me to deepen my comprehension because I've almost made a movie of my thinking. Okay? You're going to use your senses: sight, sound, texture, that's feel, and taste. So, if the character in the book is talking about eating a vanilla ice cream cone or a chocolate ice cream cone, try and imagine that you're tasting that, okay? And it really helps deepen your comprehension or your understanding about what's happening in the story, okay? I know I feel like I'm going fast, but because I really want to read this story to you guys, so I want to get started on that piece. Today you're going to practice. I'm going to read you a story. It's a little bit scary, just a little bit. But scary stories are great for creating those sensory images, okay, or that sensory imagery in those movies in your mind, because scary stories kind of are exciting and our imaginations can tend to run wild. So, as you read today, I want you to close your eyes and pay attention as I read this spooky story and think about what sort of images are you creating in your mind, and how do they help you understand the text. And then I'm going to have you draw a picture of what was in your mind. Okay? Then we will share. After I read the story, I'm going to give you time to draw, and your teacher will give you time to draw. And we probably won't get to the sharing piece today. We'll probably do the sharing piece tomorrow because I want to give you time to add lots of details to these drawings. It's really important that we see what you saw as I read, okay? So we'll talk about how it went, what senses you used, and then we're going to share our pictures tomorrow. We're not going to share today. There's just not enough time. Plus, I want to give you time to draw. And how will we know if we hit our outcome? Well, if you were able to create sensory images to help your understanding, then you nailed it. Okay? So I'm going to start reading, but I have to set the atmosphere a little bit. So, this is Bob. This is Bob, my skeleton. I've had Bob for a long time. And whenever I do a read aloud, he's always lit. He's always right there by my side to remind students that if Bob's eyes are watching you and they're glowing, You're not talking. You're listening. Okay? So make sure you follow Bob's rule and just listen. Okay. The name of this story is The Window. And it's from More Scary Stories. So it's a little bit spooky, I'm not going to lie. But 'tis the season, right? It's Halloween coming. I promise it won't be too scary. The Window. Margaret and her brothers, Paul and David, shared a small house on top of a hill just outside the village. It was so warm one summer's night that Margaret could not sleep. She sat up in bed in the darkness of her room, watching the moon move across the sky. Do you have that image in your mind? Okay, your eyes are closed. Imagine this girl sitting up in bed and looking out her window, and the clouds are moving so fast it looks like the moon is moving. We've all seen that image, right? Can you see it in your mind? Suddenly, something caught her eye. She saw two small yellow-green lights moving through the woods near the graveyard at the bottom of the hill. They looked like the eyes of some animal, but she could not make out what kind of creature it was. Soon the creature left the woods and moved up the hill toward the house. For a few minutes, Margaret lost sight of it. Then she saw it coming across the lawn toward her window. It looked something like a man, and yet it didn't. Margaret was terrified. She wanted to run from her room, but the door was next to her window. She was afraid the creature would see her and break in before she could escape. When the creature turned and moved in another direction, Margaret rushed to the door. But before she could open the door, it was back. Margaret found herself staring through the window at a shrunken face like that of a mummy. Its yellow-green eyes gleamed like a cat's eyes. She wanted to scream, but she was so frightened she could not make a sound. The creature broke the glass of the window, unlocked the window, and crawled inside. Margaret tried to flee, but the creature caught her. It twisted its long, bony fingers into her hair, pulled back her head, and sank its teeth into her throat. Margaret screamed and fainted. When her brothers heard her piercing scream, they rushed to her room. But by the time they got the door unlocked, the creature had fled. Margaret lay on the floor, bleeding and unconscious. While Paul tried to stop the bleeding, David chased the creature down the hill toward the graveyard. But soon he lost sight of it. The police thought it was the work of an escaped lunatic who believed he was a vampire. When Margaret recovered, her brothers wanted to move to a safer place where it would be harder to break in. But Margaret refused. The creature would never come back. She was sure of that. But just in case, Paul and David began to keep loaded pistols in their rooms. One night, months later, Margaret was awakened by a scratching sound at the window. When she opened her eyes, there was the same shrunken head staring at her. That night, her brothers heard her cries in time. They chased the creature down the hall, and David shot it in the leg. But the creature managed to scramble over the graveyard wall and disappeared near an old burial vault. The next day, Margaret and her brothers watched as the priest of the church opened the burial vault. Inside was a horrifying scene. Broken coffins, bones, and rotting flesh were scattered all over the floor. Only one coffin had not been disturbed. When the priest opened it, There lay the creature with the shrunken face that had attacked Margaret. The telltale bullet was still in its leg. They did the only thing they knew to rid themselves of a vampire. They built a roaring blaze outside the vault and fed the shrunken body to the flames. They watched the body burn until nothing remained but ashes. So, think about what sort of images were created in your mind. How did they help you understand the text? And draw a picture of what you see in your mind, and we will share them tomorrow. Good luck, fourth graders.